Modern agriculture has given us the safest, the most affordable, and the most plentiful food supply in the history of our species. But with our global population growing at current rates, it's been estimated that we will have to produce more food in the next 30 years than we have in the entire history of humanity. The biggest threats to face our species are things like climate change, biodiversity loss, and soil loss. But there is one group of people who can save us from that future: farmers. So I'm on a journey into the future of our food. Oh, miracle! Amazing! To witness for myself what the best and brightest minds are doing.
Everybody wants a fix. Well, the fix is nature itself.
To avert the imminent food security crisis.
We need to start to think now in order to solve the problem that we'll have in the future.
I'll question received wisdom. Why not just get rid of the cows? And interrogate how our food supply chains can respond to unparalleled events like the COVID-19 pandemic.
Technology is going to have an extraordinarily large part to play in the food chain, and I'm really excited about it.
Wow, look at this. So here's what I want to know. If we could radically rethink how we treat our land, what we grow, and how we produce it, if we could not just change our food system, but our whole planet for the better. I'm beginning my exploration with the greatest challenge that's facing us all, the climate crisis. It's a battle where farmers are well and truly on the front line. No one's more invested in mitigating climate change than farmers. You just have to ask one whose crops have been completely ravaged by drought or floods to know the impact that it instantly has on them. Climate change isn't just bad for the environment, it's bad for communities, livelihoods, it's bad for business. And of course, the business of feeding us all creates greenhouse gas emissions, with every step along the food supply chain playing a part. But could there be a way to feed our growing population and battle climate change at the same time? With over a third of the world's habitable land currently dedicated to agriculture, farmers are uniquely placed to lead the fight. Where better to start than with one of the food industry's most notorious greenhouse gas emitters? I've come to Denmark, home to 1.5 million cows, to look at groundbreaking research that hopes to revolutionize and maybe even dramatically reduce the impact of cattle rearing on our climate. Methane is one of the most potent of all greenhouse gases, and it's constantly emitted by cattle. It's estimated that a single cow, on average, produces between 70 and 120 kilograms of methane annually. Multiply that by around 1.4 billion cattle on the planet, a number that's only set to increase with rising demand in meat and dairy, and that makes for a lot of greenhouse gas. Morning, Mette.
Oh, hi, James.
Mette Nielsen of the Department of Animal Science at Aarhus University is part of a multinational research project called Climate Feed, designed to help reduce methane emissions in cattle. I want to know as a botanist, because I understand the plants in the field. I get all fine with that. Once they go in the cow's mouth, though, not so sure what happens. Where's the methane produced? How's it made?
Well, the cows eat their food. The food comes into their first stomach, which is the rumen, a huge fermentation chamber, which functions a little bit like the chambers that you use when you're producing beer. The only difference is that there are microorganisms down there that are not producing alcohol, and they unfortunately produce methane.
Cows have been called climate criminals.
Exactly, they have been labeled climate criminals, but I believe that we need to maintain a focus on the ball. And the ball is the methane, and it's not the cow that produces the methane, it's these microorganisms called archaea. So if we could just block this process and persuade the archaea not to produce the methane, we would basically have a climate neutral cow.
Love the idea of a carbon-neutral cow.
Yeah, so do I.
Across the working dairy farm, Mette and her team are experimenting with how different feeds affect animal health, milk production, and importantly, methane production.
Why not just get rid of the cows? Wouldn't it just be easier to go vegan?
Oh, that's a really good question. Why bother to try to do anything if we could just get rid of the cows? The point with the cows is that it has this amazing and unique ability to convert biomass that we cannot passively digest or utilize ourselves into very valuable and high quality feed products like milk and meat.
Their ability to convert grass, which we can't digest,
Yeah.
into products that we can digest means you can, in areas where you can't grow grains or fruit and vegetables, you can put cows.
Yeah. In many developing countries, it's impossible to cultivate the land, and there are people living there, and their only way of sustaining a livelihood is to have animals that can graze natural vegetation in areas where you can't grow crops.
Having recorded what's going into the cows' mouths, Mette and the team next record what's coming out.
So, this is our brand new respiration chamber facility. And in here we are able to measure quantitatively over 24 hours exactly the amount of methane that each animal produces. And we have in here a cow, we can call her Daisy. So we can milk her in here, we can feed her in here, and this is completely sealed.
Monitoring the cattle in this way over short periods means highly accurate readings.
Whoa! It's bouncy. This is bigger than my apartment. I could sit here for 4 days.
Mette and the team have discovered that one food in particular has the potential to reduce cows' methane emissions, and it's from an unexpected source. Oliver Gregerson is at the forefront of the emerging industry of farming seaweed for use as food, pharmaceutical products, packaging, and believe it or not, climate-friendly cattle feed.
Seaweed is a completely natural product. You can grow it in the ocean as a biomass that is completely sustainable when you grow it. There's no chemical involved, there's no energy involved in processing the feed product that you can use as an ingredient for cattle feed to reduce methane. With this seaweed, up to 30%.
In Asia, seaweed has long been a staple food for humans. But it's been discovered that when some species, like Saccharina latissima, are added to cattle feed, it can have an almost magical effect in reducing the amount of methane they produce. In the Faroe Islands, Oliver and his Ocean Rainforest Company are working on ways to farm this crop at scale.
So we have a main horizontal line that is, you can see it here, and you can see them also, all the buoys there that are keeping the horizontal lines floating. But then we have a 10-meter long vertical line. If we look behind all this, you can see the root system of the line, and behind this there's a 12-millimeter line. Here we have 45,000 meters of seeded lines deployed on 6 hectares. Later this year we will deploy another 80,000 meters, and next year we want to double that capacity again. The planet is suffering. It needs solutions to mitigate the climate change that we have caused. So this is a very exciting, pioneering endeavor to be a part of.
The seaweed they're growing here is amongst the species that Mette Nielsen is testing as part of the Climate Feed project.
So you've got loads of different ones lined up here.
Yeah, we do. There are red species, green species, and brown species.
The Saccharina latissima species has been shown to reduce methane from cows by up to 30%, which could make a huge difference in global emissions. But some species here suggest that seaweed has the potential to go even further.
This is obviously a red species, and the Asparagopsis taxiformis that you may have heard about.
So this is the miracle magic bullet one that everyone talks about.
That is the one everyone talks about.
In 2014, a team of Australian scientists discovered that using a seaweed called Asparagopsis taxiformis in cattle feed reduced methane production by a staggering 99%. The trouble is that this tropical seaweed isn't practical to farm at a large scale. And more than that, it contains bioactive compounds that might be harmful to humans.
So it's not quite so miraculous after all. It's good at doing one measure at reducing methane, but it has unexpected side effects.
Yeah, and that's the reason why whenever you're trying to do something new, develop something new, or try something new out, you always have to look at the whole life cycle to be able to see how each and every step will influence the environment, climate, human or animal health.
Nevertheless, Mette believes that if they can find a seaweed species with the perfect properties, the oceans could be an answer to both feeding our growing population and fighting climate change.
There is an increasing competition between animals and humans for land, cultivable land for either food or fodder production. But if we start including the oceans, that means that this could be a very interesting future production site.
Climate-neutral cows fed by sustainable seaweed is an exciting concept, but it's one that's still some way off. However, there are innovations happening right now in our fields that could help farmers on the front line grow more food with less cost to the environment. Global machinery giant John Deere was founded in the early 19th century. Now they've teamed up with 21st century tech specialists Blue River to create a mega machine that's capable of pinpoint accuracy.
This is, without doubt, the future of farming, the future of food.
They believe their AI-driven see and spray system has the potential to reduce herbicide use in the average field by between 80 and 90%.
This is a John Deere self-propelled sprayer. We've attached a see and spray system to it, which is ultimately using cameras, high-performance computing, and deep learning technology in order to differentiate between weeds and crops, and only spray the weeds.
It's at the forefront of what's called precision agriculture, the use of cutting-edge tech like machine learning to identify and deliver exactly what a crop needs and no more.
Making it work was not an easy task. It's a huge boom, but that's what farmers need to be able to be productive.
Yeah, 120 feet end to end.
Here is one of my favorite parts, the brains of the operation. This has the power of a supercomputer.
Ultimately, this machine is moving across the field at a very high rate of speed in order to get the productivity that customers expect. The cameras are looking at sub-millimeter level pixels to look at both weeds and ultimately crop and distinguish the difference between the two through the actual brains of the system, the high-performance compute, and then actuate those nozzles. Really, from a farming perspective, you think about those three components as the eyes, the brain, and the hands of a farmer at scale.
While once farmers might have treated whole fields, precision agriculture is allowing them to target just the areas that specifically need help, with the knock-on effect that it could substantially reduce greenhouse gas emissions by limiting the production and application of those treatments.
Just think about the environmental impact. Only targeting that weed has a significant savings on where that herbicide is placed, where it flows to not only in the crop, but off of the field and into different areas across the overall region.
Without a doubt, agriculture is one of the greatest drivers of climate change. But at the exact same time, farmers are uniquely positioned to feel the effects of it the most and really before any other industry. So that's led many people to argue that agriculture can not only mitigate the effects of climate change, but potentially even reverse it.
And one way to do that could be by using our crops to draw down the heat-trapping carbon dioxide that's steadily warming our atmosphere. As plants grow, they pull the CO2 from the air during the natural process of photosynthesis. Once captured, the plant begins breaking up the CO2, locking the carbon element into the body of the plant and deep underground in its root system, sending back the oxygen element into the atmosphere. And now scientists have discovered a way of making plants work even harder at this process. At the pioneering Salk Institute for Biological Studies in California, Professor Wolfgang Busch and a team of scientists have spotted this huge potential of plants in the fight against climate change.
When you think about it from a biological perspective, biology has solved this already. Plants have been optimized by evolution to draw down carbon and make it into biomaterials, such as, wood and other plant materials. A large proportion of our planet is covered by plants. Now we want to leverage that system to actually reach a scale that can make a global impact for carbon drawdown and carbon storage.
Over the past 2 years, the Harnessing Plants initiative has been using the process of gene editing, making highly specific changes in the DNA sequence of a living organism, to find out if the natural carbon storing power of plants can be boosted.
We have developed many technologies that allow us to look at plant roots and the characteristics we want to enhance in plant roots, and uncovered many genes and molecular mechanisms that actually shape roots and determine how roots grow. And that just fits squarely into the ideas to use roots to store more carbon.
Gene editing is not without its critics and is even prohibited in some parts of the world. However, it is dramatically faster and more precise than traditional breeding methods. Hi there, Professor Corey.
Hi, how are you?
Professor Joanne Corey is co-director of the Harnessing Plants initiative.
There's 3 traits that we're honing in on. So one of them is make the plant make more roots so that there'll be more carbon in those roots. One of them is make the plants make deeper roots. And that's because we're going to ask the plant to bury the carbon deep in the soil first. And then the third one is to make those roots have more suberin in them.
Suberin is a substance that naturally forms a protective layer around the roots, stems, and trunks of many plants, and is a major constituent of cork. It holds masses of carbon atoms and is importantly resistant to decomposition.
Plants do this all the time, but then within a really short period of time, if you talk about annual plants, the second they're harvested or burnt or decomposed, that's then released again. But so you're saying the suberin is a much more stable molecule and holds it for a longer period of time?
Yeah, so there's evidence that there's suberin in soils that even centuries old, and so that's pretty old. And so
for these super green plants to make a difference, the seeds will need to be sown on a massive scale. But of course, global agriculture is massive. There's an estimated 1.6 billion hectares of agricultural land on the planet, and just 6 crops make up half of that. Transforming them could transform our futures.
We provide an opportunity to draw down and store carbon at very large scales, just because there's so much of our globe already covered by agriculture. So we are focusing on crop plants and some of the most prevalent crop plants on Earth.
By turning crops like wheat, corn, and rice into carbon-storing machines, the scientists think that, by working hand in hand with farmers, this audacious idea could reduce excess CO2 emissions by up to an incredible 46% each year.
I think farmers provide such an important and essential service to the society, not only being the producers of food, and we need much more food to basically have enough for the 10 billion people that we'll soon be on this planet, but also they're the stewards of the soil. And so more carbon in the soils actually leads to better soils. Soils with more carbon are more fertile and are more healthy. They hold more water, and they hold more, make more nutrients available to the plants. So when we put more carbon in the soils via our carbon sequestration enhanced plants, this will make the soil better and agriculture more sustainable. That's a win-win for sustainability as well as carbon drawdown and the farmers.
This, if it does work, could be key to putting farmers at the real front line of defense against climate change. How optimistic are you about the future?
Yeah, I'm a bit of an optimist. I am, really. You know, I want to leave the planet in better shape than I got it from my parents, you know?
Habitat loss and climate change are driven in a really large part by agricultural activity. But the flip side of that is that it means that farmers are really uniquely placed at the front line to make a difference. And when they team up with biologists, engineers, and geneticists, really anything is possible. So I can't help but feel optimistic about the future.
Next time, I'm looking at the threats that face our crops.
We're in the middle of a pandemic. We could have a pandemic of plant disease as well.
And what farmers and scientists are doing in the fight for a food-secure future.
We need crops that are adapted to new conditions.
Now, this isn't something you expect to see in the English countryside.